Day, and speaking today is Reverend Debbie O'Donnell. Let's welcome her.
Okay, that song was really lovely, wasn't it? Oh, okay, so now I get to be uplifting here for after that. So, welcome everybody. It's a new month, it's a new theme, and guess what? God is in the house all month. Okay, yes, actually, God is always in the house. And I think we feel it here in this room, right? Because we're all here together. We're hanging out. And does everybody have, who doesn't have a clicker? Okay, Jeff's on it. Take two, they're much smaller than I thought when I ordered them. Okay, anyway, so God is always in the house. He's in the house as it relates to our human bodies. He's in the house as it relates to the air that we breathe. It's in the house, actually, no matter what. God is in the house. We are always standing on holy ground. Always. But sometimes we're more aware of it than others. So this month is all about looking at some ideas, some practices that can help us remember, to help us, get back into that holiness. So I want to start off with a question, a statement today. Did you know that whenever you reach a new level in your life, you are expressing more life? That whenever you express more life, you're having a more successful life. And whenever you're successful, God is successful. And we're always successful when we recognize our divine partnership with the One. Our founder, Ernest Holmes, in the textbook writes, "It is right that we should be successful, for otherwise the Spirit is not expressed. The divine cannot lack for anything, and we should not lack for anything. This is what makes life on earth worthwhile. Everything that we do should be considered successful because it leads us to those things that are constructive and worthwhile. The realization of the Spirit that is present right here and right now and in all of our acts proves that not only God is all there is, but in even the slightest things we undertake, we are totally supported." Love that idea. Jack and Cornelia Addington wrote in the book, Your Needs Met. God accomplishes through us. Our success is God's success. God does not know failure, so how can we know failure? So, what does any of that have to do with God being in the house? Well, when we are aware of ourselves as successfully living from that place of divine partnership, successfully living from that place of knowing who and whose we are, I'll tell you what, we're on fire. We really, truly are, right? But sometimes we're really not aware of that. Sometimes we kind of forget that little piece of grace and gold that we have. And we start to feel maybe not so successful. Maybe even a little bit of a failure, like our hopes are just been dashed, or our dreams have just sort of crumbled, or what we want just seems like just a little bit out of reach, and we can't stretch ourselves anymore. But none of that is true, because as the Addingtons shared, God does not know failure, so how can we? It is never a failure. That's a judgment that we make from our humanness. What we perceive as a failure is just a place to learn and correct from. And maybe we need to learn and correct a few more times than we want, right? But at some point, we get there. And when we start to feel like we're a failure, like life is working against us and not for us, here's the one thing that I know for me. That is when I am disconnected from my source. That is when I'm letting out there take more importance than in here. It's because I've lost sight. I've disconnected. And it kind of feels like God isn't in the house. God isn't anywhere. And if it is not working for me. But this is the truth. It is all God, all of the time. And God never leaves the building. Elvis, he left the building. Us, God, we don't leave the building. Because, as Gary sung so beautifully, we just need to recognize that every breath is life. That everything is grace divinely unfolding. One of my favorite old-time authors, Florence Scovel Shinn, and if you've not read any of her books, they're short, and she was a little crazy, but delightful. Anyway, she talks in her book, The Secret Doors to Success, she talks about the idea that we are all successful, that there is success in each and every one of us. But we, in our humanness, build up the wall that keeps us from our success. It's kind of like that biblical parable of the walls of Jericho. Remember the walls of Jericho? Jericho was filled with divine riches of happiness and goodness and fresh flowing waters and lovely shade trees. I mean, Jericho had it all. But you couldn't get into Jericho because you could not penetrate the walls around Jericho, no matter how hard you tried. So, here's something to ponder. What kind of walls have you built around your Jericho? Maybe just one brick at a time, one fear at a time, one loss at a time, one, oh, I just can't do this anymore at a time. What resentment, fears, unworthiness, lack, limitation? What walls are you building? Because the interesting thing about the walls that we build, we're building them because we are cause. We are always cause. Always, always cause. What we think about and we put our feelings behind and we put our actions towards is what we're getting. We are cause. Our job, this is my truth. Okay, divine partner, that very thing itself, this is my truth. That's the cause. And then the law takes over and delivers to us the effect. Unless, of course, our walls are so high that we can't see it or accept it or acknowledge it. I can't be the only one that at times feels that if only I could, when in fact it's if only I allow myself to think about and remind myself about the truth of who and whose I am. It's about stepping out of my humanity and stepping into that idea of making a joyful noise. Really, that's what it is. See, the parable goes on to talk about how they brought the walls down. Remember that? They were told to walk around the walls of Jericho every day for 6 days. And then on the 7th day, they walked around it 7 times, and they made a joyful noise. They used ram's horns, and the priests had trumpets, and the noise got louder and louder and louder. And the The people making the noise got more and more joyful and more happy and more connected. And all of a sudden, it wasn't about the walls coming down. It was about experiencing this wonderful thing called life. And what happened? The walls came tumbling down. And they celebrated together from that place of joy. That place of joy. So how do we bring our walls down? How do we recognize that our good is right? It's right here. It's right here, actually. You really can't build walls around this that are permanent. They're only temporary. So, you ready to take down a few walls today? Because that's what we're doing. Taking down some walls. First, for me, it's about setting an intention to remember my truth. To really just lean into knowing that this too is God in action. To knowing that I am cause. Yes, not to say that this wonderful thing called cosmic soup doesn't put some stuff in front of me that I'm not so happy about. Not to say that race consciousness doesn't sometimes, come up and tap you on the shoulder or hit you over the head. But I'm still cause. You are cause. We can change our thinking. We can change our feelings, and we can change our actions. All of that we can do with exactly what we've got, exactly where we are. We can set an intention to allow Spirit to really, truly lead, direct, guide, and support. We can set an intention to allow grace to always be walking with us. We can start hanging out with the types of individuals that are in this room right here. Right? Those wonderful kinds of individuals. We can start hanging out with those people that we want to be more like. Jack Canfield once asked, I can't remember the guy's name now, Tony Robbins. He's like, how do you make so much more money than I do? And Tony Robbins says, well, the people you hang out with, how much money do they make? He's like, about the same as me. We're all pretty much in the same ballpark. It's like, well, that's it. I hang out with people that make twice as much as I do. And I'm comfortable there. Right? It's about hanging out with those people. It's about not complaining, but counting our blessings. And it's about celebrating every single day. Just to wake up and celebrate. I took a breath today, and it felt good. When we set an intention to live this day from a place of spirit, from a place of connection, from a place of knowing, there's no time then to compare or to judge. There's no time to be reminded by our imperfections that are all around us. Because we are now on a new course, and we're doing it in divine partnership. Don't you love that idea? We can just set an intention and decide. Just decide. Now, when we make that decision, it's not a straight road, right? There's curves and twists and turns. But I will tell you that that is a much better road to be on than that circle of the monkey mind, right? It keeps telling you the same thing over and over. Let's build one more brick over and over. The curves are much easier. And I tell you that from experience because I spent a lot of time living in that monkey mind. You see, I knew I was very successful. Very successful. Of course, my marriage kind of sucked, and my husband was a little, not only verbally abusive, but he also couldn't figure out how to keep a job. But I was on top of my game, you guys. I mean, I was hitting all of the right notes. Of course, I was kind of exhausted from pleasing everybody and never taking time for me. However, I was living a great life, making good money, lots of friends, lots of travel. Of course, I was stressed out and not willing to talk to my family very much because God help me if somebody called me out. But I was so successful, you guys. So I did what my other successful friends did, right? I went to my general doctor and I was like, I'm a little stressed out and I'm having a hard time sleeping. But unlike my other friends, did my doctor send me to the pharmacy? No. He sent me to a psychologist and said, okay, see me in 60 days and then we'll send you to the pharmacy. So, psychologist, what was the first thing she pointed out to me? I had the wrong definition of success, you guys. Because success was all about out there. It was about the fact that people thought I was successful. They were calling me, asking me for my advice, for references. I mean, man, it was cool. Well, until it really wasn't anymore. Because she called me out on it. And she said, I'm going to send you someplace where people are truly successful. And thus, my first Science of Mind church. Yep, that's where she sent me. She was like, I don't want to see you again until you've been going to this church for at least a month. And I'm thinking, man, I can't get drugs. I can't get counseling. I guess I'm going to go to church. And I did. And that is where I saw success. Because it was people supporting each other, not judging. It was people being filled with joy, even though there were some unhappy situations happening. It was individuals who allowed themselves to be vulnerable and to be loving and to be caring and to just be fully present as they were. Call it following your bliss, or call it living an enlightened heart, an enlightened life, whatever. For me, what those people in that center were, they were successful. That minister, Dr. Peggy, had Lou Gehrig's disease, and she was so successful up there because that heart opened. It was truly open, and it was filled with joy. What I saw and what I learned is that power isn't out there, it's right here. That it has nothing to do with design or anything. It just has to do with being vulnerable and being oneself. And again, it starts within, because each of us is cause. Seriously, when you think about that, man, doesn't it make you want to meditate or pray or dance or make a joyful noise? Think about it, guys. We are in control of how we act and how we react, and that's the only thing that's really, truly important. In the book Millionaire Mind, T. Harv Eker wrote, no thought lives in your head rent-free. No thought lives in your head rent-free. No emotion lives in your heart rent-free. Think about that. Don't you love it? We pay a price. We pay a price. And a lot of times that price we're paying is that it allows us to let that ego take over. And we start to complain. And we start to think more about what isn't working than what is. And then we start drifting off path. But I am here to tell you that you can't drift too far if you're hanging out with the right people. if you're reading the right stuff, if you're got the right spiritual practice, and that it is a commitment to you. You can't drift too far if you've already set the right intention. Join me. I am continually co-creating my successful life. See, that's true. If you know you are in divine partnership, if you know that God is in this house and in this house, then you've already conquered it. Abraham Lincoln said, "Without divine assistance, I cannot succeed. With it, I cannot fail." Ralph Waldo Emerson says of success, "To laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people," which all of us are, by the way, "and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics, and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition. To know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. This is to succeed." That is what success is, you guys. It has nothing to do with stuff. It has to do with connection. Connection to ourselves, connection to the one, and to connection to each other. So, you ready for some assignment? So, I wish it wasn't summertime, but here's your assignment. I do this little workshop, and it's called Tearing It Down. Because this week I want you to reflect on that wall of Jericho. Because it's your wall. And only you can start to whittle it away. Because on the other side of it is your good. And while you're whittling it away this week, don't forget that it is all God. Even the wall is God. That is how powerful each of us are. So this week, I invite you to look at your wall and be brave and willing to start taking some bricks off. Maybe they're stones. I don't know what your wall's made of, but think about what it's made out of. And just one by one, maybe it's a sand wall. You just need a little water. I don't know. But this week, set an intention to be one with the one and start looking at your wall. It's not fun. It's really sometimes kind of painful. But I promise you, when you start looking at it, it becomes very, very rewarding in your life. Our lives, each of our lives will change a little bit towards the oneness if we're willing to look at the wall. And last, but definitely not least, remember, keep your happy hand somewhere close, because this should be just pure and total joy, and that is our truth. And so